This is Bishop Michael Burbidge, and you are listening to the Walk Humbly Podcast.
Welcome to the Walk Humbly Podcast. I'm Billy Atwell, the Chief Communications Officer for the diocese and your co-host. If you're listening to this podcast and you're benefiting from the wonderful generosity of so many faithful Catholics throughout the diocese who have given to the Bishop's Lenten Appeal in past years and certainly this year as well, the BLA supports many different ministries that I'm sure you've heard of, one of which is the Communications Office. We would just want to say thank you before we get started. If you haven't rated this podcast or write a review, please do that wherever you're listening. Make sure you sign up for our e-newsletter at arlingtondiocese.org and follow Bishop Burbidge on Twitter. More than 21,000 of you are already doing that, at Bishop Burbidge, where every day you can read a short reflection on the gospel of that day. And make sure you're following the diocese on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And send your questions for Bishop Burbidge to info@arlingtondiocese.org, or you can call or text us at 703-831-7013. I welcome your host, Bishop Burbidge. Bishop, how you doing?
I am doing well, Billy. I would like to join you in thanking the faithful in our diocese for their generosity to the Bishop's Lenten Appeal. This year's appeal, we're actually off to a very, very good start. And I'm so grateful to our pastors for their support and to the parishioners. And as you said, I think the response is because our faithful understand clearly throughout the years this appeal is always used to support those ministries that help so many people, especially those in need, and to help in the work of evangelizing, sharing the good news and the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm so grateful to everyone for your generosity, and please know my deep gratitude. We're recording this podcast on St. Patrick's Day, so happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Sometimes people don't realize Burbidge is actually an Irish name.
Yeah.
Both my father's parents were born in Ireland.
Wow.
And really didn't come over until they were in their 20s to the United States. They met here in the United States. And actually, my grandfather, I could barely understand him as a little child because of his brogue, So I know this. I have special memories of this day. My father and I would always march in St. Patrick's Day's parades and things like that. So it's a day for us to celebrate and to remember St. Patrick, the bishop, the patron of Ireland, because he had a hard life. He had hard work. He had to evangelize a country, and through his great work was able to do that. Great reminder for all of us that we are missionary disciples, and certainly we're recording the day as March Madness begins, and so that's always an exciting time. I think the excitement of March Madness is because it's exciting. It's one and done. Like you lose, you're done.
Right.
I always say, thank God it's not like that in our spiritual lives with the Lord.
That's right.
One and done. God is always ready to forgive us and to allow us to begin anew. And hopefully that's something our listeners understand throughout the sacred season of Lent. If you need to go to confession, be forgiven, God is there to allow you to begin anew. If your Lent didn't get off to as great a start as you had hoped, it's not too late. Start again. It's not one and done here.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see those light is on signs in the parish, outside the parishes where you can go for confession. And our parishes are so generous already with confession, but it's nice to see it, open up even more. Bishop, the war in Ukraine is continuing, sadly, and despite the bravery of so many Ukrainian people, Russian forces are continuing to gain ground in certain areas and capturing certain cities. And they're getting dangerously close to NATO countries, which elevates the risk to a whole new level where that's where world wars actually can happen. Pope Francis announced this week that he will be consecrating both Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. He plans to do this in St. Peter's Basilica next Friday, March 25th. Would this, as this has progressed, is this the way that you saw the church and the way it should be responding to this situation?
Well, sure, especially from the very beginning, in the midst of seeing evil and violence and so much suffering, and it's heartbreaking. I know that with all of our listeners, it is just so sad to see the violence, to see the loss of life and the suffering and destruction. It really pains our hearts. And so from the very beginning, one of the most important things we can do is to turn to the Lord in prayer. I mean, it's, our Heavenly Father sent His Son into our world, who, by His own cross and resurrection, destroyed the power of darkness, of suffering, and of evil itself. And so we know that in Christ there is victory, and it's only the Lord who will transform hearts to end this violence, this insanity, and to bring about peace. So yes, we have to be united in prayer. I know our parishes every day, every Sunday, include intercessions, and I know special rosaries and holy hours are also being held for these special intentions. But what a way for the universal church to be united.
Yeah,
with our Holy Father consecrating Ukraine and Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. We'll participate in the same way. In that we'll be united with the Holy Father. I'll be celebrating Mass, the noon Mass that day at our cathedral. We will have a prayer of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary that we will say after Mass together, and I will be asking our pastors to do the same. And I would encourage the faithful to maybe this is a day, March the 25th, that
that's right. Yeah.
That you really could attend daily Mass that day.
Yeah,
and for this special intention. But Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us.
Absolutely, it's dearly needed. Bishop, we started off talking about the Bishop's Lenten Appeal. One of the most critical ministries it supports is our Vocations office, which supports our seminarians and makes sure they get good formation. You had a phone call with a couple of them this week, and would you share some of the details with that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's something within the church that maybe is not known to all the faithful, but before someone is ordained, they receive a call from the bishop. Now, we don't mean just a phone call.
This preceded the phone, right?
Right. But what's very important, and men know this when they enter the seminary, their whole time in the seminary, they are not the only one discerning.
That's right.
The church is discerning too. And so that's why it's so important that as seminarians make their way through formation, that they, out of their love for Mother Church, they're transparent. They allow the church, their soon-to-be bride, to get to know them well, like who they truly are. None of whom are saints, but striving to be. And so the church, through this formation program, through the seminarians, through their connection with their bishop and their vocation director and their formation advisors, are discerning together. And then they petition for orders. And then I receive a recommendation from the vocation director, from the formation team, and then upon prayerful discernment, and hopefully by then there are no surprises, because I'm getting to know them well throughout the years. But it's then that I speak with them and say, I am calling you to holy orders, to the priesthood or to the diaconate. And then it's official.
Wow.
And, as I always say to the men, is that really this is the Lord speaking to you through His church. So He's using a bishop, a successor to the apostles, to say, yes, come forward. So when they get that call, or when I'm able to tell them in person, it's a moment of great excitement for them. And because it's really a conclusion of a lengthy process.
Right.
And so how blessed am I as the Bishop of Arlington to have called 8 men to the priesthood who will be ordained, God willing, on June the 4th. And 8 men to the Transitional Diaconate, meaning transitional, God willing, they'll be ordained priests,
right,
on April the 23rd. So what, in God's plan, God willing, 16 priests in 2 years. We need every one of them. Believe me, we need every one of them. And so I am so grateful to the faithful for praying so much every day for our seminarians for an increase of vocations, and to our men who have been called, and to their parents and their families. I offer them congratulations.
Do you remember when you received those calls?
Sure. Yeah, you never forget it.
What was the emotion?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, you kind of know you're going to be
Right,
called. Like,
yeah.
if you weren't, I think you'd have a feeling. But still, like, until you hear it, it's like, and you remember exactly where you were and, you know, and where you received the call and everything like that. So, yeah, it's great.
It's almost like an engagement of sorts. Like, you kind of know it's coming up to that point, but hearing it is certainly
it makes
special.
all the difference, yeah. Wow. And then it's canonically, it has to be publicly announced.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone who is interested, both masses will be at 11 a.m. at St. Thomas More Cathedral. Again, the Transitional Diaconate ordination will be on April 23rd at 11 a.m., and the ordination to the priesthood is on June 4th at 11 a.m. All are invited to attend. Please come if you can, and if you cannot physically attend, we'll be live streaming both of them. So just go to youtube.com/Arlington Diocese or arlingtondiocese.org, and we'll make the links when we get closer to those ordinations easier to find. But what a beautiful moment for the church. What do you attribute? We have 16 men that you just mentioned. That's a lot of phone calls to make. That's a beautiful challenge for you. But what do you attribute that many seminarians in a diocese of our size?
Well, I think a few things. I always say that our first bishop, we're getting ready to celebrate our 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So I always, speak about our first bishop, Bishop Thomas Welsh, who was involved in seminary formation as rector of seminary. He dedicated, from the very beginning, our diocese to praying for vocations. It was very, very, from the very beginning, through our Blessed Mother, and asked our cloistered nuns to pray in a special way for this intention, and all the faithful. So I think from the very beginning, our diocese had a strong foundations with vocations. I'm grateful for the beautiful spirit of family life in our diocese, because so often family life is the main reason. It's just from the family that these vocations come, including many of our schools and people being invited, and plus the great example they see in our priests in this diocese, and ultimately it's by the grace of God.
Absolutely. Well, those are great reasons. Well, so keep praying for our seminarians that God would continue to guide them. Over the last few weeks, you've had the opportunity to attend both the men's and the women's conferences. You celebrated Mass, met with the attendees, and addressed them and spoke to them. Unique this year was that you also held listening sessions. This is part of the Synod of Bishops that Pope Francis called for, and he's called on pastors to hold these at the local parishes. But you've been attending a lot of these. So first, how did the conferences go from your perspective? And was there any interesting feedback that you heard at these different listening sessions?
Yeah, first of all, it was great to be back at this is a standing tradition in our diocese, the men's conference and women's conference, always a big success that certainly has been altered in the last couple of years. So It was great to be back with, I think it was 700, 800 men and women on each Saturday. So to see so many of them gathered in one place with that really dynamic speakers, the opportunity for me to celebrate Mass, to have a question and answer session, and then a listening session as part of the Synod that you mentioned. And as you also said, Billy, we were doing the same. I've asked every parish in our diocese to have a listening session with either the pastor representing me in the parish, or with various groups I've sent delegates to represent. And I'm trying to be as present as possible, both in the parishes and with groups. And I have to say, when this first started, it was a synod on synodality, listening session. What is this? And we tried. We read the documents of the Holy See. I've asked Father Planty to serve as my delegate, and he did a wonderful job. He and people he asked to serve as a committee with him in sending our pastors the materials to make it as easy as possible. And each one has a facilitator. There's a script for the facilitator, and basically it is a listening session. So that's number one. but it's focused. It's focused on specific questions. It's not, as we always say, it's not about changing dogma or discussing dogma,
right.
Changing of the dogma of the church, or specifically your parish mass schedule.
The truly untouchable
right,
of untouchables.
Yeah, it begins like the first question is, how have you encountered a Christ in your parish and in your diocese? And it's beautiful to listen to some of the responses. Then the very next question is, where have you met obstacles in your parish, in your diocese, in encountering Christ? And again, when people answer those questions, they do so very respectfully. And because sometimes there are obstacles, we know that.
Yeah.
But they do it out of love for the church and in a very helpful way. And then how can we bring truth and goodness and beauty in a more effective way throughout our diocese? And it's really it's amazing. And for me, it's at first people are shocked that I don't comment or I don't clarify or I don't say anything except thank you. And it's really been a really wonderful experience. And I was, as you know, I'll be required to write a 10-page report.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people, they say this to me afterwards. They just say, it is just so wonderful to know that the Holy Father, that my pastor, just want to hear from me, and you respect me, and it's been a great experience.
That's wonderful. I'm glad it's been so fruitful. All right, so a quick bonus round before questions from the faithful, if you don't mind.
Sure.
March Madness. What college basketball teams do you see leading the tournament, and do you have any thoughts on who's going to sweep it?
I have lost touch this year for some reason. I am far from being an expert here.
It's all those listening sessions.
Yeah, it's all these listening sessions. But I guess with a little bias here, I would say keep your eye on Villanova. I think they may go a little further than people think there. And
they're ranked pretty high right now.
Yeah,
number 2?
I think they're 2. Yeah. And I know that Gonzaga and Baylor and Arizona and all those people are mentioned as favorites, but you never know, right?
That's true.
You never know. That's what's fun about it. There's always so many surprises and all those things. So again, as long as people enjoy this and in the right spirit and get their mind off other things, it's fun.
I feel like half the time the office pool is won by someone who knows nothing about
That's
basketball.
always happens, exactly.
They like Illinois because mom's from Illinois.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of our staff persons was telling me yesterday they do a family one. It's large, and the last time the 8-year-old daughter won the tournament. He said, "You want to talk about being humbled?"
Probably wasn't reviewing spreadsheets.
Who had no idea, right? Exactly.
All right, so we've got a few questions from the faithful, and the first is one that we've gotten a few times. So I just wanted to bring this to your to the podcast here. Is there an update on the Latin Mass? You've given us updates along the way, so you've communicated on this before, but there's been some time since the last. Is there anything you wanted to update about the process that you're going through there?
Yeah, sure. From the moment we received the motu proprio from our Holy Father in July, and in addition to the response in December, there has not been a moment, in a sense, or a period of time where this has not been on the front burner.
Right.
And I'm grateful to the Holy See. I'm grateful to the faithful for their patience in us eventually and hopefully in a timely way issuing an implementation document. But I really am seeking great collaboration and advice. As you know, I asked Father Lundberg to serve as my delegate in getting to the point where we do have an implementation document, and with his committee, I have spoken and invited all the priests to speak to me on this issue. I certainly have heard from the faithful of the diocese. Please know I have received your letters and your emails, and thank you for respectfully sharing with me. And you hear from different angles, but thank you for sharing with me your thoughts. But we're in a diocese in somewhat in a unique position. I'm aware that other bishops have received the motu proprio and responsa, and they issued their document. Well, in many dioceses, that's because they have two parishes that celebrate the traditional Latin Mass, and both parishes fit into what the motu proprio and the responsa allow. So they're done, right?
Not exactly the case here.
It's, we're a little bit unique in that we have 70 parishes,
right?
And at some point, during the week, the traditional Latin Mass is celebrated in 21 out of 70 parishes.
Yeah, it's quite a ways.
We are very, very unique in that way. And, as I've been here 5 years, and, I have absolutely appreciated and understood how that is spiritually enriching, this Mass for faithful in our diocese. But with the motu proprio and with the response,
that's right.
Don't forget, this was in consultation. The Holy Father consulted every bishop in the world. And I had the opportunity to describe the situation in our diocese, and I certainly expressed that my understanding of how meaningful this is for the spiritual nourishment and a spiritual life of some of the faithful in our diocese. And I think we can say that, I hope our people know that the traditional Latin Mass will continue. There are situations where we know we can continue the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass in our diocese, maybe not to the extent that we are currently seeing, but certainly not in any way that will be a hardship for people to be able to attend a traditional Latin Mass. We're blessed to have a number of priests in our diocese who also have a love for the traditional Latin Mass, and also, as Pope Benedict had requested, have been trained to celebrate the Latin Mass and have and mastered, the Latin. That was what the Holy Father wanted from priests who celebrate this Mass, and so we're blessed in the diocese. So this is on the front burner. And I ask our people to continue, please, to pray for the guidance and wisdom that we need. And above all, please, to make sure that we stay united as a diocese. This is revolving around the celebration of the Holy Mass, the Eucharist, the source of our unity. And God forbid that would do anything to divide us. So we're trying our best to do what I said my two goals were: to be faithful and show fidelity to the Holy Father, and to be pastorally generous as the motu proprio and the responsa allows.
Very good. All right, we have a question. For a young adult transitioning from college to independence at the beginning of a work career, how can we avoid losing touch with our faith during that time?
Yes, that's a great question. And, I think one of the things, and I hope, college students, especially those involved in campus ministry, as they were getting ready to graduate, understand there's going to be a transition here. That as you graduate and as you move into the corporate world or in society, your parish experience most likely is going to be different than your campus ministry experience.
Right.
Because campus ministry is focused on basically a select group. So sometimes people leave college or the university saying, well, then I wanted to be just like it was in my campus ministry because that was the best experience possible. Well, the faithful includes a lot families and people of all various ages, but it's the same faith. It's the same Eucharist celebrated. So I would say, first of all, to keep your commitment to attending Mass each week. That is so essential, so that you do not lose touch with faith. Why? It's Christ coming to us, speaking directly to us in His Word, giving us the gift of His body and blood. You cannot stay strong and steadfast in faith without that help. I also think it's very, very important that you continue to pray every morning and every night. I think that it's also that you see your faith as ongoing. We're never done. We're never finished learning our faith. So take those opportunities in your parishes, whether it be Bible studies or lectures or whatever your parishes offer, to be engaged. And I'm thrilled in our diocese that there are so many small groups within our parishes.
That's true.
And I think that is one of the greatest ways to stay in touch with your faith, to be involved with men, women who share your beliefs and also are also asking the same question, about how can we stay in touch with our faith, but also how can we help each other, encourage each other, lift up each other in faith. And sometimes people get overwhelmed by the size of a parish. That's why these small groups developing is such a great initiative.
Absolutely. The next one says, I saw on Facebook that you celebrated the Rite of Election. You actually celebrated 2, I think.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Acting in God's name in the Rite of Election, the church make its election, we'll put that in quotes, that is the choice and the mission of the catechumens who have the spiritual dispositions that make them fit to take part in the sacraments of initiation. So catechumens are those who are seeking to be fully initiated into the church through the sacraments of baptism, confirmation, and Eucharist.
They'll start from scratch,
right?
Yeah,
and
from
that's
the ground floor.
and it's an intense period of preparation. The rite of a Christian initiation adults. Most people are familiar with RCIA.
That's right. Yeah.
The Rite of Christian Initiation Adults is the center of their preparations. And so those who come for the Rite of Election are those adults who are not baptized, catechumens, who have heard the mystery Christ proclaimed, who have consciously and freely entered into the way of faith and conversion and say, yes, I want to enter at Easter, be fully initiated into the church. And at that Rite of Election, through a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by their family and their sponsors and godparents, we say we are now. They leave there as members of the elect. It's it's a beautiful ceremony. And then similarly, adults who have been baptized but have not yet been received into full communion of the Catholic Church, we call candidates. I mean, have not maybe received baptized but not received Eucharist or confirmation. And so the church also at the Rite of Election can recognize those candidates who will be sealed with the gift of the Spirit and take place at Christ's Eucharistic table. I always say at the Rite of Election, you look out because people are at different ages receiving this. And it's like, if I ask you to tell me your story of why is it now that you're here, I bet those stories would be fascinating. Like who it was who inspired you or what experience it was that led you to this moment. It would be so interesting. I would love to hear all their stories.
Yeah.
But what they all have in common, that this is part of God's plan. This is God's time. It is God who has chosen them. And the other thing they have in common is that they're not making this journey alone. It is the whole community of faith, not just their family and their sponsors, but all of us who are supporting, encouraging, and even you hear in our intercessions during Lent, praying for those who are preparing for full initiation into the church. So my prayers are with all of them and with their families.
Very good. And if you want to, if you go to the new, actually Arlington Catholic Herald has a new website, so go check that out. That's a good reason to go check it out, if nothing else, CatholicHerald.com. But you just search Rite of Election, R-I-T-E, of Election. You can see pictures from past years, and then we're also, we have an article in there from this year's Rite of Election. We did a 2-parter because there was 2 different masses for it, and it'll be published in next week's edition of the Herald, so you can check it out there in the coverage.
Great shout out for the new website, Arlington Catholic Herald. Great job to you and the Catholic Herald team. I really like the look, and it's very user-friendly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Kevin, our executive editor there, worked very hard with the team on that. They did a great job. Bishop, any final thoughts?
No, just on this St. Patrick Day, I suggested that this morning that during these challenging and unsettling times that we may repeat confidently the words of St. Patrick. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's hand to guard me, and God's shield to protect me. And that's my prayer for all the faithful, that they will know God's love and protection and guidance so that they may continue to walk humbly with our God. Thank you for listening to the Walk Humbly podcast. Make sure you check out more episodes on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at Bishop Burbidge, where I offer gospel reflections each morning and share photos and updates of what is going on in the Diocese of Arlington. Stay up to date with news, event information, and inspirational content by subscribing to our e-newsletter at arlingtondiocese.org.